guys, what's up? Coming back at you with another video of me cooking. Welcome to Mr. McFarland's Kitchen. Today, we're going to be making some chocolate chip cookies because it's easy, I don't know how to cook, and it's also a crowd favorite. So, real quick, let's go over our ingredients. We got semi-sweet chocolate morsels. We have brown sugar. We got regular sugar. We have flour. We have baking soda. Salt. An egg. Vanilla extract. Dark chocolate chips, just in case someone wants to feel a little fancy and eat something with a little bit more of a finer taste to it. And we also have baking powder. We also have some butter back here, which I'll explain in a minute. We have a mixing bowl for all of our ingredients, and then we have a separate mixing bowl for our dry ingredients. So, today, since there's only two of us that live in my house, my wife and I, that means that the two of us are the only ones that can eat cookies. So baking a whole batch of cookies is not great for our waistlines. So, today, we are going to be baking only half a batch of cookies. However, this is where all the math is going to come in because we do not have a recipe for a half a batch of cookies. We have a recipe for a whole batch of cookies. So let's get to it. Here's a trick on how to soften butter. What you do, you take a bowl, you fill it up with water, you put it in the microwave. You microwave it for 3 or 4 minutes. The whole point is to not get the water super hot, is to get the bowl hot. Because then what you're going to do, you're going to take the butter, put it on a plate, take the hot bowl, put it over the butter and let it sit for a while, and then that'll actually help soften the butter a little faster. So, let's get to this cooking. So this recipe calls for 1 cup of sugar. However, we're going to be using some division. We're going to take 1, divide it by 2, and then we are going to get half a cup. So what we'll do is we'll take our sugar, and this is the white sugar. So then, you'll take your half a cup, shake it a little bit, make sure you got a mostly level top and then you got a super level top there. But you want to have pretty level top like that. And we're going to pour it right into the bowl. Next ingredient, brown sugar. Original recipe called for 1 cup, so it's going to be the same. We're going to do half a cup. So brown sugar is a little different. It's kind of thick. And it's actually almost like a little wet. So what you can do is pat it in, make sure that you have enough, not too much though. Okay, so it looks pretty good, and we'll dump it in. Next ingredient, all-purpose flour. It says in the original recipe to have 3 cups, but again, we're doing half of the recipe, so we will take 3, divide that by 2, and we will get 1.5. So instead, we can do this in 2 ways. You can use a full 1 cup plus a half a cup, or you can do 1/2 plus 1/2 plus 1/2, and that will get you 1.5 cups. So I'm gonna go the route of scooping 1 full cup and then scooping a half a cup. Full cup. Half a cup. And that's our flour. So the next ingredient is salt. I happen to have here pure Himalayan ancient sea salt. So the original recipe calls for 1 teaspoon. We're going to cut that in half. We get 1/2 of a teaspoon. There we go. I think that's our grain of rice. There we go. Okay, so the next ingredient is baking powder. The original recipe calls for 1/2 of a teaspoon, but this time we have to do 1/2 of 1/2. So you can multiply 1/2 times 1/2 to figure out what we're going to have. So if you multiply fractions, you multiply straight across. You don't have to do any cross multiplying. So you'll get 1 times 1 is 1, and then 2 times 2 is 4. So that means that we're going to have Our answer is 1/4 of a teaspoon. So we're going to take the teaspoon, we're going to scoop it, and see how it has this little lip right here? Use that to scrape your measuring spoon off so you can get a nice even 1/4 of a teaspoon. Next ingredient is baking soda. It asks for 1 teaspoon. So if you have your measuring spoons, this one happens to actually say 1/2 teaspoon. So you can look at that. It's the same as before when we had 1 cup and we divided that by 2. We are dividing 1 teaspoon by 2 and getting 1/2 of a teaspoon. So in this bowl we have what are called all of our dry ingredients. So as you can see, it's all the stuff that is powder. So we're just gonna mix that together until everything is evenly distributed. This shouldn't be like a crazy process. Don't go nuts trying to stir it because you're gonna make a huge mess. Flour is very powdery, and so you can get flour dust all over the place. And so we're just gonna stir it all nice like this. We're going to be putting all of our wet ingredients into a bowl. There's a lot less wet ingredients than there are dry ingredients, so that's why I have a lot smaller of a bowl here. So the recipe calls for 2 eggs, cutting that in half. That's just 1. So get a nice crack and then let it go. You're going to be mixing, so you don't need to worry about not breaking the yolk. So the original recipe called for 1 cup of butter. So we're going to cut 1 in half and we're going to get 1/2. So I pre-cut some of this butter because it's soft on the outside but a little firm on the inside. So I'm just going to keep taking these little chunks and just kind of shoving them in there just to see, how close I can get to getting a full cup. I'll even pick off some of the more softer stuff on the side. And also, it's a good time to mention that, before you do any cooking or anything, you should make sure that you wash your hands, keeping everything safe and sanitary and everything. And we'll just call that good. That's about a whole cup. You can see there's some little gaps in there, but it's a little above the line, so that's fine. Sorry, 1/2 a cup. We're working with 1/2 a cup. It's a full 1/2 a cup of butter. So for right now, we are using our hands to mix all this together. We are creaming the butter and the egg together. So we're going to put it on a very low setting. Next, at this point, we're going to start preheating the oven. So it needs to be the 375. Now this is a situation where we are not going to be cutting this number in half. You don't want to be cooking your cookies at less than 375 because then for this recipe you could end up getting very sick because the egg may not be cooked properly or whatever. So we're going to punch in 375 and hit start. And then there we go. It's going to take probably 10 minutes or so to get up to 375. So after you have mixed the dry ingredients and the wet ingredients together, you might end up with kind of a chunky, powdery stuff in your bowl. If that happens, that means that the butter probably wasn't soft enough like it was in our case. So what you do is if you start mixing it with your hands, you can actually soften the butter a little more and have it mix with your ingredients more because the warmth from your hands will actually start to melt the butter. So now we have this beautiful kind of brown tan dough here, and it's like Play-Doh. Has the consistency of Play-Doh, and that's exactly what you should have. So next, what we're going to be adding is the chocolate chips. So the original recipe calls for 2 cups of chocolate chips, but in this case, we're going to put 1. And at this point though, chocolate chips, you could really add as much or as little as you want. If you really love chocolate, you can add maybe a little more. It's not going to affect how the cookies will cook. You could even add peanut butter chips. You could add white chocolate chips. You could add nuts if you're feeling a little dangerous. So we're gonna take this, put it back in there. We're gonna get our 1 cup chocolate chips. I'm gonna wash my hands real quick because remember, there's raw egg in here. And you don't want to be touching anything with raw egg because you can get salmonella. So the original recipe called for 2 cups of chocolate chips. Since this is a half recipe, we're doing 1 cup of chocolate chips. But we're gonna do a little bit of a mixture. We're gonna do some dark chocolate, we're gonna do some semi-sweet. So, in order to be a little bit more accurate, we're actually going to use our 1/4 cup because 1/4 plus 1/4 is a half. So that right there is half of a cup of chocolate. And here is another half. So as you can see, 1/2 plus 1/2 is 1 whole, but 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 plus 1/4 is a whole. I got a little lost there. 4 of these equals 1 of these. So we have our ball of cookie dough, and you can see all the chocolate chips. So this you can make kind of your own size for this as well. Some people will take a tablespoon size, or kind of like a meatball size. They'll scoop it, and then they will put it. You gotta make sure that you spread them out because when they cook, they're gonna flatten out, and you don't want them to cook into each other. You can see this is the size of our cookie balls that we put on our cookie sheet. This is what's called parchment paper, which is used specifically for the oven. It will not catch on fire in the oven. As you can also see, this is how much we have left. This is a pretty substantial ball of dough there, so we're going to be putting this probably in the freezer to save for later. But it says that you should have your oven at 375. You can see here our oven says 350, but it's on the convection bake option, and this oven happens to drop the temperature by 25 degrees if you have the convection on. We're going to put these into the oven for 8 to 10 minutes, or until the edges are golden brown. On the middle rack. Okay, it's time to take the cookies out. I'm going to take them out. You can see around the edges, they're a little golden brown. We're going to let them sit for a few minutes because they will actually kind of decompress, and then after that we'll move them to a cooling rack. So after about 3 minutes, you just move them onto a drying rack, or a cooling rack, so that way they can cool off, and you can let the chocolate chips re-solidify. But so I can't resist. I'm just gonna eat one. These would be really good if we remember to put the vanilla in them.